Welcome to Changelog and Friends, a weekly talk show about R2-D2. Thank you to our partners for helping us bring you awesome pods each and every week. Fastly.com, Fly.io, and Typesense.org. Okay, let's talk. All right, we are here to Kaizen once again for the 11th time, second time on Changelog and Friends, and we're joined by our old friend Gerhard Lazu. Welcome back, Gerhard.
Hi, it's so good to be back. It feels like I'm back home.
You're home here with us.
We have the comfy couch over there for you that you can just sit back and relax. You've got the mic boom arm, which you can bring the mic really close.
Yep.
Got comfortable headphones. And of course, your favorite drink.
Yeah, feels great. For you too, I hope, dear listener. If not, pause it, go and do your thing, and then resume.
That's right. So Kaizen, always be improving.
That's it.
Is that what we're doing? Are we improving? Are we just making progress?
My perspective, we are improving.
Okay.
Now, what are we improving? Let's talk about that.
What and how?
Okay.
Yes, we're trying to, for sure. That
Yeah.
is the aim, is to continuously improve. And in order to do that, I guess you change things, right? You're like, well, we've been doing X. Let's try Y. And this is our new 2-month cadence. It's been roughly 2 months since we last recorded, so we're good there. It's the summer months, which for me, at least a little bit, is more time to work on things because less news, less events, less things going on, more vacations, which does slow us down. I think we've all taken a little bit of time. But Kaizen 11, if you look at the discussion we have, which is discussion 469 on our changelog.com repository on GitHub. We'll link it up, of course, but Gerhard does a great job of outlining each Kaizen with its own discussion. This one's got a bunch of stuff in it, Gerhard. This is maybe like the best Kaizen ever.
I think so. I really do. Like, so many things changed. Like, I couldn't believe it, because when you work on it and it's like a week in, week out, you maybe add one thing or maybe even half a thing. There were weeks when nothing happened.
Yeah.
But then 2 months are up and you look at it and you have like 7 things, and some of them are really big. And you think, whoa, that's a lot of things that changed. Did they improve? Back to Adam's question. Well, let's figure it out. I mean, I obviously have my perspective and I can share the things which I think improved. But for the listeners, what improved? And for you, Jared, what improved? And Adam as well. When it comes to the app, when it comes to the service, did you notice anything improving?
I would say
No.
the biggest improvement. Oh,
It's not
I had to
obvious.
think about it. Front-facing features, maybe not so much. I mean, this has all kind of been infrastructure, back end. Of course, I'm always tweaking the admin and improving it for us. The biggest thing for me has been the change of how we deliver all transactional email through the application, which did introduce a very difficult to debug bug, which I haven't actually quite figured out yet. I just worked around, which we can talk about. But we're using Oban for all email delivery, which includes all of our newsletter delivery. So like literally for a while, the first step was just like, okay, when we send out changelog news, we need to send that out with persistent background queue. We can't just ephemerally do that because it's just a lot of emails and you don't want to have something die midway through the process and like half of our readers don't get their newsletter. So like we need to make sure that's robust. And so I put that through Oban. We also don't want it to be sending duplicates, which actually is kind of the bug that it's doing it anyways. But
His face, y'all. You missed his face in the video. So I saw his face and it was just hilarious. I had to laugh. Sorry about
what did
that.
my face look like? Defeat? Was it utter defeat? Or what was my face?
It was just like, it was disgust and defeat and humor at the same time.
Well, let's look at it this way. We're sending emails twice as hard, twice as
Yeah,
better
well,
than none. So-
We laugh so that we don't cry, Adam. We laugh so we don't cry. The weird thing about this is that it's not like, hey, everybody gets 2 emails. Like that would kind of make more sense.
It's just you, right?
It's not just me. I wish it was just me. It's a handful of people that get like 30, 40 of the exact same email. It's like it's requeuing them. I can't figure it out, but I just reduce it down to a single worker because I had 5 workers going. and somehow it was just like requeuing. I'd love to figure that out. But right now we're back to okay. But yeah, it was very embarrassing. It's like a handful. And one time it was our guest. I'm trying to think of who the guest was. He was very gracious.
Solomon?
I'm like, it wasn't Solomon, no. But maybe it was, and he didn't tell me about it. It's just like you get 35 of this thank you email versus 1.
Yeah.
But everybody else just gets 1. Very strange.
You were like your lot. You don't have enough changelog in your inbox.
Or DDoSing your inbox.
Yeah.
So that was a big change. Also a bit of a headache, but it did prompt me to finally do what I had said I was going to do last year, which is we signed up for Oban Web, which is supporting the Oban Pro cause. And we don't have that quite in place because I want more visibility into our background jobs, basically. The way I'm getting visibility right now is I proxy the Postgres server so I can access it. And I literally am looking at the table of Oban jobs and doing things
like a boss, straight in prod, of course.
Yeah, as you do when you're the
real
boss.
Developers developing production. Let's just be honest about it.
You got to do what you got to do, man. I got to see what's going on here. So
You got to improve on that.
That's where the action's at, you know?
I would rather have the nice web UI, but right now all I have is a UI into the database table.
Now, because you mentioned that, that's the one thing which I didn't get to. It's on my list.
So close.
What else is coming up? It will not take long, but I had a good reason for it.
What's that?
I did all the other 8 things.
Oh, I see. So, I guess that's good enough.
Yeah.
You accomplished all these other things instead. Yeah. So the weird thing about that, I guess the reason why I had to pull you in on it, because otherwise, so Oban Web is just distributed as an Elixir package, right? And the thing is because it's effectively an open core kind of a thing where he has Oban, which is a package which is open source and free and all that, and then he has a subscription. It's distributed via its own hex repository that he hosts and has some sort of credentials, which is fine locally, but then you have to somehow get that so that your CI, when it goes to install all the things to deploy, it can actually authenticate to his hex server. And that's why I was like, Gerhard should probably do this because I'm not sure exactly how much Go code has to be written in order to get that done. And so that's why I pass it off to you. But yeah, I would love to have Oban Web for the next Kaizen because it'll help me figure out exactly what's going on with these duplicate emails. That being said, aside from that particular bug, it is really nice to have the persistence and the ostensible opportunity just to have a single send versus if we have 15 nodes running the app, who knows who's going to grab that and just send it, right? So that's a big one for me, and the replay ability of the emails to resend in case it bounces and stuff. We didn't have that before, so that's cool.
Right. So by the way, I hope this isn't a surprise. I would hate for it to be, but let's see what happens.
Yes.
We are running 2 instances of the changelog, which means that even though you scale down the worker to 1, there will be 2 Oban workers running.
Right. That I do know.
Okay.
But
cool.
it fixed it anyways. So don't care at this point. It's working.
Amazing.
Maybe. Listener, if you've gotten more than 1 email from us, maybe 15, maybe 73 emails, do let us know. We want to know these things.
Oh, gosh. That's a lot of emails.
We don't want to. Yes.
So we're finally distributed then? We have 2 versions of the app. So we are finally telling the truth in terms of we put our app in our database close to our users.
So it's all in Ashburn in Virginia.
Okay.
So it's all in US East in that data center. Now we have the option of obviously spreading them across multiple locations, and we should do that. That's like the next step. So from 1, you go to 2. That is like a nice improvement. And then if that works and we're happy with that, we can go to more. And that's the plan. But before we can do that, we should also obviously replicate the database. So we should have multiple followers, like 1 leader, multiple followers, and then obviously all the local apps, all the apps which are not running in Virginia and in Ashburn, they should connect to their local Postgres follower.
So they're connecting closer to themselves.
Exactly.
Versus back to the one in Virginia.
Exactly. And then we can even like remove shielding, for example, from Fastly. But that's a change which I didn't want to do before we had like multiple locations. So right now we're like a single region, but more than 1, which is already an improvement.
Right.
Can we do a quick TLDR, TLDL of why it's finally happening? It's caching, basically, right? That's the reason why we haven't been able to replicate the application was because of caching issues.
Yes, but no.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay. Okay, so not a TLDL then. Give the long version of that. Why?
So the O-band workers were an important part of that, right? So knowing that we're not basically missing important operations was essential. So because the job's not going to the database, when, let's say, the app stops halfway doing something, that's okay. The other instance can pick up the job and resume it and, send the email. In this case, 38 times. I mean, there's something there.
Well, they're just overachievers. I always liked my code to go above and beyond. So
that was one. The other one, the caching side of things, I think it's okay if multiple backends have different caches. I think that's okay. Obviously, we'll need to look into that as well. And this is back to you, Jared. Where are we with that? Because I still don't know what is the plan. After all, this, we've been back and forth for a year now, 2 years.
Right.
We're getting closer, but we're not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that we should point out with regards to this, I think the Fly machine upgrade to apps v2 is pushing us into this new world. We did not, at this point in our lives, choose to go into this new world. And maybe, Gerhard, you knew the date better than I did, but we knew this migration was coming, where Fly was saying you have to upgrade to apps v2. I just didn't realize it was going to happen when it did. And so I wasn't ready. The code wasn't ready. And the migration went through just fine. You did some work there. You can talk about the details of that work. We're now on apps v2. And that allows us to run these multiple nodes at the same time. It requires it, really. Doesn't it require it?
So, you can run just a single one.
Okay.
So a couple of things. First of all, this migration was like a progressive rollout. So certain apps of ours, we receive notification hey, these apps will be migrated from V1 to V2 within the next week. And then our app, the changelog app, it required a blue-green deployment strategy. Blue-green was not implemented for apps v2 until maybe a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. Something actually was a month ago, because 2 months ago, they didn't have this option. So a month ago, this was enabled. Shortly after, I think a week after, we received this notification, hey, this app will be migrated to v2. But the problem for us is that our deployment configuration, I wasn't sure whether it will work with v2, because what they say is, hey, if you have a chance, try and save the Fly config after the upgrade, because some things may have changed in the configuration. So in our case, we didn't have to do that. Everything continued working, which was a nice surprise. But when you go to V2 and when you go to machines or apps V2, their strong recommendation is to run more than one.
Okay.
And the reason for that is the app will not be automatically placed on another host if a host was to have a physical failure.
Gotcha.
It doesn't happen that often, so on and so forth, but actually, the bigger the provider is, the more often it happens. So in our case, I think we would have been fine, but I wanted to make sure that we're running on 2 hosts just to prevent the app going down and then me having to basically jump into action and fix it. So that was, I think, pull request 475, and you can check it out on GitHub. So I was ensuring that the app deploys, they work on Fly IO machines. I did a few small changes, a few small improvements. The Fly CTL, the CLI was updated, a couple of things like that. And then everything worked as it should have. The warning which you get in the dashboard, in the Fly dashboard, if you run a single instance, they say, we strongly recommend that you run more than one, and they explain in their documentation why. So it's basically a strong recommendation, and we did it.
Oh, I see.
Okay, so we did it.
Yep.
But I will now confess that we were not ready to do it. I didn't know we were doing it yet. And I did not fix the caching problem.
Right.
Which we did experience. So a few people mentioned, hey, this Go Time episode appears in my podcast app and then it disappears. And then it appears again.
Right.
And, I call that flapping. I'm not sure exactly what it is. But basically, depending on which version of the app you're hitting, the cache may or may not be up to date. And so the reason for this is because the way the code works is it's after you publish or edit or whatever, we go and clear the cache, which is just right there in memory in the application server. And we do not clear the cache across all of our application servers because we aren't good enough to write that code yet. I do have what I think is the best case fix for this, which I learned from Lars Fickman, but I'm not going to exactly use exactly what he built. I think we just should use the Phoenix Pub Sub implementation. But in the meantime, I was like, well, this isn't cool. So I'm just going to reduce our cache times. These are response caches. So like you hit changelog.com/podcast/feed. We deliver you an XML file of like multiple megabytes, right? We cache that right there inside the application because it's not going to change. And we'll cache it for infinity until we have an update, right? Well, I just changed that to 2 minutes. And I was like, well, we'll just cache it for 2 minutes. And every 2 minutes, we'll go ahead and just regenerate and we'll watch Honeycomb and see if that puts ridiculous amounts of strain and slows down our response times and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This is behind Fastly, by the way. It's just that Fastly has a lot of points of presence and every single one of them is going to ask for that file. And so there's still a lot of requests. That was just kind of good enough. It's working, right? Things are fast enough. They're good enough. Doggone it, people like us. So that's an old Stuart Smalley line for those who missed it.
Because I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
But that's not really a fix. It's just a workaround. It stopped the flapping because basically if you're out of date, you're only going to be out of date for 120 seconds and then you're going to get the new file. And so that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just clearing the caches every 2 minutes. And so every app server is going to be eventually consistent every 2 minutes. I'd much rather have the solution that actually makes sense, which is clustered app servers that are pub subbing an opportunity to clear their caches. And we can go back to infinity because there really is no reason to regenerate that until there's an update. But for now, we're just doing every 2 minutes. That was my quick fix. And I was hoping that it wouldn't provide or require too much extra processing on our app servers. From what I can tell in Honeycomb, and I'm no expert, it seems like everything's okay. Obviously not operating at full potential at the moment.
Yeah. So this is a very interesting thing that you mentioned, because one of the improvements that we did, we set up both SLOs that we were allowed to set up in Honeycomb. We can come back to why there's only two. So the first SLO is we want to make sure that 95% of the time, podcast feeds should be served within 1 second. So in the last 30 days, that is our SLO. The second one is 98% of all responses should be either 200 or 300. So these are the two SLOs. Now, what we can do now is dig into the first SLO, which is 95% of the time, the podcast feeds should be served within 1 second, and see how that changed since you've made the caching change. What I've seen is no change when I was looking at this.
Oh, good.
So I'm going to share my screen now. Make sure that
that I audibly describe what we're looking at for our listener.
Exactly, and that I'm not missing, anything important. So I will try to do this as good as I can.
We're looking at Gerhard's screen.
Yes, thank you.
This is a Honeycomb browser of podcast feed response latency. Go ahead.
That's it. So 95. So all configured. Right now, the budget burned down. We are at negative 5.68%.
Is that good or bad?
Well, we've burned our budget, which means that more than 95. So you can see 94.72.
So we're failing.
94.72% of the time, we are serving our feeds in less than 1 second.
Oh, I can fix that. We just changed the budget so that we pass it.
Right, exactly. So that would be exactly. So let's just agree on a new budget. That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but this is just like supposed to give us like an idea of how well we are serving our our feeds. Now, these feeds, as you know, they're across all the podcasts.
And all clients all around the world, right?
Exactly. Okay, so now I'm sharing all of it, like the entire Brave browser, so I can basically open multiple tabs. So I was looking at the first one, 95% of the time. So regardless whether cached or uncached, I have like some saved queries here. So now we can see what is the latency of cached versus uncached feeds. These are the last 28 days.
Looking at hits and misses.
Exactly. When we hit them, it's more or less the elapsed time. So I can just drill down in these. And I can see last 20 days, they are served roughly within 0.55 seconds. So between half a second.
500 milliseconds, 550 milliseconds. Yeah, we'll take it.
So let's go to the last 60 days and see if that changed. That shouldn't have changed, by the way. We have a few big spikes. And by the way, this is Fastly. So Fastly serving this, we can see some spikes all the way to 7 seconds. But overall, we're serving within half a second.
No big change.
So let's flip this and let's say, show me all the misses, because this means it goes to the app, right? So
2.5 seconds.
That's it. So what we're seeing here, we can see how many of these requests, right, went through. So we have about 2,000 in a 4-hour period, 2,500. And we can see that the latency wise, we are at 2.3 seconds, 2.8 seconds. It varies. But over the last 60 days, we have obviously like an increase here up to 4 seconds, 4.6 seconds. This is July 9th. But otherwise, it hasn't changed.
Right. So my change was no big deal.
A nothing burger.
Which is nice.
Yeah. So here's the other thing. Let's have a look at the URL. I think this is like an interesting one. So let's group them by URL, because what will be interesting is to see which feeds take the longest, right? Like the P95. And you can see all the misses. So this is the podcast feed. The P95 is 2.9 seconds. Practical AI 1.5 seconds. But the one which has the highest latency is the master feed. And I don't think that's surprising.
Not at all. If you actually just go download the master feed, I just did it the other day. It's about 11 megabytes. I mean, it's a gigantic file.
Yep.
And we're recalculating the contents of that once every 2 minutes. Every other time, it's just sending the file. But even just sending that file from, I guess it's from Fly to Fastly, that's just going to take some time. And then sending it from Fastly, obviously, to wherever it goes, well, that's up to Fastly. But the only way we can make that faster, there's two ways I can think of. One is you cache it forever. So you just get rid of that calculation time, which happens once every 2 minutes, right? Then all you have is send time. We're already doing gzip and whatever else you can possibly do in terms of just like HTTP stuff. The only way you can make it faster is take stuff out of it, I think.
Yeah, limiting it.
And we used to do that. We used to limit it because I think we have over 1,100 episodes in there, and there's there's everything pretty much. Not the transcripts, thankfully. That would really balloon it up. But chapters, et cetera, et cetera. There's lots in there. Show notes, links, descriptions, all the stuff for every episode we've ever shipped. The only way to make that smaller is you just limit it to N episodes, where N is some sort of number like 500 or 100. We used to do that. I would happily continue doing that if the podcast indexes would just keep our history. But they won't. They'll purge it. And then you'll go to our master feed and you'll see 100 episodes. And you'll be like, cool, they have 100 episodes. Like, no, we've put out 1,100 plus episodes.
Yeah.
We want people to know that. We want people to be able to listen to them. We used to have complaints. Hey, why won't you put the full feed in there? There is a feature called paginated feeds. It's a non-standard RSS thing that we used to do. And we paginated that, and it was a much smaller thing. And then it was great, except Apple Podcast didn't support it. Spotify didn't support it. Blah, blah, blah. It's that old story. So I was like, screw it. I'm just going to put everything back in there, and it's just going to be expensive and slow. And that's what it is. What do you guys think about that? Like, is that a good trade-off? Just leave it? Because it's 11 megabyte file. I don't know. What do you do?
Well, I think that serving the full file is important, right? For the service to behave the same. So I wouldn't change that, right? If you change the file, it will appear differently in these players. So I don't think we should change that.
If they all supported pagination, I would happily paginate it every 100 episodes or so. And we have a bunch of smaller files that are all faster responses. And like, I would love to do that, just like you do with your blog.
Yeah.
But, you can't make these big players do the cool stuff. They never do the cool stuff. They always do what they want to do. So,
but I think that's okay. So if we look at how long it takes to serve this master feed from Fastly, from the CDN directly versus our app. So when it's a cache hit, when it's served directly from Fastly, we are seeing a P95 of 2.7 seconds.
Okay.
When our app serves it directly, it's 9.9 seconds. So it's roughly 3 times slower. I don't think that's so bad. Our app is 3 times slower than Fastly.
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
I also think with this kind of content, it's okay. If this was our homepage, this would not be okay.
Yeah.
If we had humans consuming this, it would not be okay. But podcast apps, crawlers, like, oh, sorry, you had to wait 3 seconds to get our feed. Like, who cares? You're a crawler. You wait around until there's the next one.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have slow clients and clients that aren't people, they're actually just more machines consuming it, I have less of a problem with that being just not super fast. If this was our homepage, like, it would be all hands on deck until we get it fixed. There's no way I'd make people wait around for this kind of stuff.
What I'm wondering if we can improve this is, do we care about the cache hits or do we care about the cache misses? Because based on the one that we care about, we can maybe see if there are some optimizations we can do about cache hits. I'm not sure what we can improve because it's not us. It's basically Fastly.
I'm not either.
But cache misses, and I think this is something really interesting. If I dig into Honeycomb, into the cache misses, you will notice something interesting. You'll notice that there was quite some variability. So it would take anywhere from 4 seconds to 15 seconds, right? Like we see the squiggly lines. But then from August the 4th, we're seeing 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 6 seconds. So it's less spiky and it seems to keep within 10 seconds. So there seems to be an improvement. So I'm wondering what changed there. Did something change on August the 4th? Now, I have a hunch. I'm going to see if it's that. I'm not sure.
August 4th, I'm looking at the commits on August 4th. Run Dagger engine as a fly machine. That was your commit on August 4th.
Yeah.
And that was the only one in terms of things that might have went live.
Well, I think August 2nd, that's when I commented. This was merged last week. We upgraded PostgreSQL.
Upgrade Postgres on August 2nd.
Yep. Went from Postgres 14 to Postgres 15.
It's possible because the app is hitting the database not on every miss, but every miss once every 2 minutes. And that's going to be really slow.
Right.
And so that could slow down other requests. So if Postgres is getting our data back out faster somehow because of some sort of optimization that they did, which I could certainly see, then that might be what explains that, because there's no application changes from us.
So again, like all these other pull requests, I mean, it went from AWS S3 to Cloudflare. Again, I don't think that's related.
No.
And that happened on...
That was just over the weekend.
3 days ago, August 5th, actually. So that happened after our improvement.
But that wouldn't have anything to do with the feeds. That's just that's the MP3s themselves, but not the feed files. So, well, cool. So Kaizen, right? So we upgraded Postgres and we got a little bit faster in our cache miss responses on our feed endpoints. Mm-hmm. Well, let's just wait till they do Postgres 16. We'll get even better,
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if this impacted others. So let's go maybe last 14 days, just like to see this a little bit better. Looking at cache misses, and it's difficult really to see right there at the end. Last 7 days, I think it's just the master feed that improved. I mean, that's the one that there's like some improvement there, but then like in this feed, it's difficult to see the P95. Miss go time feed. I mean, maybe we can just zoom in that. I mean, do we want to continue doing this or shall we switch topics?
I don't know, Adam, how bored are you at this point?
One more layer.
Okay. Oh, he's never bored. He's always going to go one more. All right. Peel the onion.
So this one seems to haven't changed. Like a go time feed hasn't changed. Right. If anything, it looks like slightly worse here. But again, like we would need to continue digging to see like, hey, what client, which data center it's coming from, things like that.
Yeah.
So maybe it's location specific, right? It's a client, for example, from Asia, which is going to Ashburn. Obviously, that's going to be slow. Or we have a few clients from, a certain geographical region.
Getting routed to the wrong place. Yeah.
Which would add to this latency, exactly, routing differently or whatever. So, but the master feed's improving, which is, by the way, the one which takes the longest. I think that's a good one.
And the improvement was around 8 seconds, roughly, plus or minus?
Yeah, roughly 8 seconds. Yeah, I mean, in terms of percentages, it's more than 2x, 3x, almost 3x faster.
Yeah.
So that's a huge one.
And so to kind of zoom back out a little bit, Jared, you're saying the perfect world would be a pub sub multi-geo application to know if the update should happen and do it indefinitely.
Right.
Or infinitely, I think you said, versus this temporary, you weren't ready necessarily to, version from V1 to V2 apps, and then you made it update every 2 minutes instead of infinitely, because that would obviously have the cache issues we have with clients.
Yeah, exactly. There's no reason not to cache forever because the file doesn't change until we trigger a change by updating something.
Right. When it updates, we update it and then it caches it again forever.
Exactly. And right now when we update it, we clear the cache, but it only clears it on the app server that's running the instance of the admin that you hit. The other app servers that aren't running that request don't know that there's a new thing. Well, with Phoenix PubSub and clustering, you can just PubSub it. You don't even have to use Postgres as a backend, which is what Lars Vickman's solution does. And you can just say, hey, everybody clear your caches. And they'll just clear it that one time. Mm-hmm. And then we never have to compute it until we're actually publishing or editing something. And so that's darn near as good as a pre-compute. Because I know there's a lot of people out there thinking, why don't you just pre-compute these things? You know, this is why static site generators exist, etc. Because that is just a static XML file effectively until we change something. That's a different infrastructure. That's a different architecture that we don't currently have. And so it's kind of like easy button versus hard button. I've definitely considered it, but if we can just cache forever and have all of our nodes just know when to clear their caches, then everything just works hunky-dory. For now, we'll just go ahead and take the performance hit, recalculate every 2 minutes. That seems to be not the worst trade-off in the world looking at these stats, but that would be a way of improving these times.
But now that you mention that, when we used to cache, when we used to have a single app instance, I didn't see much better times. The feed was being served in more or less like the same time, right? So if I look at, like, this is go time feed when we had misses. So let's go with 60 days. In a 60-day window, right, it was just under 2 seconds and it hasn't changed much, even when it was cached.
That's weird.
So what I'm wondering is, again, going back to the generating these files, could we upload them to our CDN? And our CDN, by the way, have two, right?
Of course.
Now there's another thing to talk about. We have Cloudflare R2. So could we upload the file to R2 and serve it directly from there?
Yes. That was one of my other architecture options, is doing that. You have a lot of the same problems in terms of like updates and blowing things away and all that. It's definitely a route that we could go. We have a dynamic web server that is pretty fast and is already working.
Yeah.
And so just running the code at the first request, to me, makes a lot of sense. But we could certainly, at the time of update or publish or whatever it is, go ahead and run all the feeds, pre-compute them, and upload them somewhere.
I'm thinking OBAN. We want more OBAN, right?
We could.
And it doesn't matter which instance picks up the job and which instance uploads the feed. Ultimately, one of them will upload the feed on our CDN, and that will be that.
So one thing we don't want to change is the URLs to our feeds.
Mm-hmm.
And our URLs to our feeds currently go to the application. And so the application would have to be wise to say, does this file exist already on R2? And if it does, serve it from there. If not, serve it myself.
No, because we have Fastly in front. So we can add some rulings Fastly to say, hey, if this is a feed request, forward it to R2, don't forward it to the app.
What if R2 doesn't have the file for some weird reason?
Well, it will, right? It will have an old one.
That's what you think. What if it doesn't?
Well, you've already uploaded the file once. You're just updating.
Well, we have to blow it away. Maybe it's just a race condition at that point.
Well, why can't you just re-upload it? You're doing a put.
Well, that's true. Is that atomic? I guess that's probably atomic.
It should be. I mean, the file's already there. You're just basically updating an existing object because it's an object store.
Right.
You're saying, hey, there's like this new thing. Just take this new thing, and then the new thing will be served.
Okay. Yeah, we could definitely try that route, and then we just turn off caching at our application server would never
even see those requests.
So we would lose some telemetry that way because we are watching those requests from the crawlers, because some crawlers will actually report subscriber counts.
I see.
And so our application's logging subscribers, which is a number that we like to see, from those feed crawler requests. So we would lose that visibility. Maybe we could get it at the Fastly layer somehow.
Fastly logs everything to S3.
We're putting more and more stuff into Fastly at this point as well. So I'm tentative. I like to have everything in my code base if possible. But
the folks at Cloudflare right now are really upset by this conversation.
Well, we're using Cloudflare behind, so that's there.
I know, but we're not using their stats. We're not using. The more entrenched we are to Fastly's way of things, they're like, no, that's the dark side.
Right. And the Fastly folks are probably thinking, you're using Cloudflare. No, that's the dark side.
Yeah, well, we're using both. So we have two CDNs.
But we're using them differently, though, aren't we? Aren't we using them differently? Like we're using R2 simply as object stores, not CDN necessarily.
That's right. We replaced AWS with Cloudflare, not Fastly with Cloudflare. So far, who knows where we go from here. But let's talk about this migration, because this was a big chunk of work that we accomplished.
Yeah.
Well, the first thing which I want to mention is that you've made this list, which really, really helped me. It was like a great one. I wasn't expecting it to be this good. No, I was. I'm joking. I'm just pulling your leg. No. I was.
This is better than I normally do. I was like, you know what? let's open a pull request. Let's do this the right way.
Yeah, I was surprised just by how accurate this list was. Say, wow, Jared knows a lot of things, like how this fits together. I'm impressed. So I genuinely appreciated you creating this. Like, by the way, this is pull request 468 if you want to go and check it out. I mean, you created like the perfect, like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Like, what am I missing? And actually, you didn't miss a lot of things.
Good.
So we went from S3 to R2. Where, as you know, we're using AWS S3 to store all our static assets, all the MP3s, all the files, all the JavaScript and the CSS and all those things and SVGs. And we migrated, might I say, with no downtime, like zero downtime.
Zero downtime.
Yeah, on a weekend, as you do, right? I was like sipping a coffee. Okay, so what shall I do this weekend? How about migrating hundreds of gigs from S3 to R2? And it was a breeze. It was a real breeze.
That's awesome.
And your list played a big part in that, Jared. So thank you for that.
That's good stuff. Wow. Let's put a little clap in there.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate that. Applause. I'm looking at number 6, make sure we can upload new files. And you didn't do that yourself, but you can check it off because I just uploaded changelog news yesterday. Everything worked swimmingly. We published a new MP3 file without any issues whatsoever.
Amazing.
Where should we start? Should we start with the why on this one? I mean, I think
Well, the why is easy, right?
maybe Adam can cue up with a why here.
Well, I just pay attention to how much money we spend.
Because you're paying, right?
That's right. Every dollar comes out of our bottom line, pretty much, right?
And I was like, why is this doubling, every so months? And then it was just like, it had been very, very small for so long, like sub $10 for a very long time. In the last year or so, it's gotten to be like 20, 30, 40, 50. And then recently it was over 100.
Yeah.
I think about 6 months ago, a few Kaizens ago. And I'm like, why? And we couldn't really explain exactly what, but then we explained some of it, but then it only went down a little bit. I think it went back down to like $120. But that's a lot of money to spend on object storage.
Right.
I mean, it's more than we want. And when you can get free egress, well, you take free egress.
Yep.
So one theory you mentioned, I think we actually got to 150 at one point. Maybe the last time we recorded Kaizen, which really was like, okay, let's make some moves here because...
Yeah, because if it goes to 300... like if it doubles from 150 to 300, that's an issue.
So I knew that it'd be a bigger lift to migrate our entire application which is the bulk of it because of all of our MP3s, which Fastly, of course, is serving them, but we are putting this as the origin for Fastly. And so it's requesting them from S3 for us. And that was the major cost. It was like outbound traffic, major cost on S3. And so we knew with R2, we'd have zero on that. This took 2 months-ish from then. Like we actually landed this. It was almost 2 months from us realizing that we should do this. However, changelog.social, which is a Mastodon app server, was also on S3. And I immediately switched that one over to R2 just to try out R2. And it was super fast and easy to do that. And I think we went from 150 down to 120. It started to drop precipitously after that. And I think it's because of the way the Fediverse works. When we upload an image to Mastodon, as I do with my stupid memes and stuff, right? And we put it out on our Mastodon server. Well, that image goes directly from S3. No, I put Fastly in front of it too, I thought. I might have. But somehow that image is getting propagated around because all the Mastodon instances that have people that follow us have to download that image for them to be able to see it. And so this architecture of the Fediverse, where it's all these federated servers, they're all having to download all those assets. And so I think maybe that was a big contributor to that cost was just changelog.social. And once I switched that, it started to come down. And now it's going to go to pretty much zero because of this change.
Yeah, it just should be a few dollars. And I think we have a few things to clean. So I was basically enabled storage lens, which is an option in S3. And you can dig down. So I'm just going to, again, sharing my screen. I'm going to click around for a few things. I'm going to come back to 469. Obviously, you won't have access to this, but if you're using AWS S3, you can enable storage lens and have a play around with it. So what I want to see is here, extended storage lens. Okay, and now it loads up and we can see where the cost goes. So we can see the total storage, we can see the object count, we can see the growth and how things are changing and how many more things we're adding. This was in the last day to day, all requests, like month to month. So you can see we have like a 1% change in total storage month to month. So we're like approaching the 1 terabyte mark not there yet, but getting there quickly. And if we see like which are the buckets that contribute, and I have to remember where was I? Oh, there you go. So you can see changelog assets, which are the static ones, they contribute 22%. Changelog uploads Jared, they contribute 21%. This is the storage costs. And changelog com backups, which is mostly nightly, they contribute again 20%. So they're like roughly evenly spread. So I'm wondering, is anything here that we can clean up? Anything here that we don't need?
Well, we can get rid of changelog uploads Jared, because that was my dev environment. Basically, I would mirror production with the assets.
Right.
So that I had the most current assets, because I like to do that when I'm developing, have it look real. And so I just had this like AWS S3 sync command that would just sync from /assets to mine, which is why they're roughly the same amount of gigabytes. Probably I haven't run it in a while.
I see.
And so that's all moved over to R2. So that whole bucket could just get blown away.
Okay. Should we do that now live?
Yeah, let's do it.
What's going to happen, right? What's the worst thing that can happen?
Let's do it live.
Like some sort of ta-da sound.
Right, boom, everything explodes. So I think we won't be able to do that. We'll need to delete the individual objects, by the way.
You can't just delete a bucket? What's wrong with these people? It's too dangerous.
I remember this again, this not being possible. So let me search for Jared. I found the bucket. So let me select it. Let's say delete. And to confirm, buckets must be empty before they can be deleted.
Oh, you know what? R2 has the same exact thing, because I created a test bucket. I tried to move our logs over there as well.
Yeah.
That failed. Maybe we can talk about that. But I couldn't delete it without emptying the bucket first. And I'll say this, R2 does not have the ergonomic tooling that's built up around S3. And so in order to delete all the objects inside of the R2 bucket, we're talking about you're writing JavaScript, basically. Like there's the GUI apps, the tools, like all that stuff isn't there. And it's API compatible with S3, but not really. It kind of goes back to our conversation, Adam, with Craig Kirstians about Postgres compatible isn't actually Postgres compatible.
Yeah.
Cloudflare's S3 compatible API is not 100% compatible. It's like mostly, but enough that certain tools that should just work don't. So like Transmit, for instance, which is a great FTP. It started off as an FTP client, has S3 support. I think I complained about this last time we were on the show, so I'll make it short, but it doesn't support R2 because of like streaming uploads or some sort of aspect of S3's API that R2 doesn't have yet. So anyways, I haven't deleted a bucket from our R2 because you have to actually click, like highlight all and then delete, and it paginates, and they're like, okay. And there's like thousands of files. How do you delete them from S3? Just open up an app and select all and hit delete, or what?
Well, I think I would try and use the AWS CLI for this.
You would?
Yeah, that's how I'd approach it. And I think just like that, I would like maybe script it, like list and delete things as a one-off. Now, I would try Transmit to see if that works. I mean, we're talking S3 now, right? So
I just open it up in Transmit and hit delete.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing now. See if I can delete it from Transmit.
Oh, it's going to be gone already. I already did it. That's why nice GUI apps are just for the win, you know? I just open it up in Transmit, select all. Hopefully I did the right bucket. It was pretty fast.
All you had was just the uploads folder in changelog uploads Jared, right?
There was a static folder, but it's already gone because I just deleted it.
Nice.
Better look at it quick because it's going away. That's why it'd be great to have a Transmit for R2. So somebody out there should build a little Mac GUI for R2. You can call it D2.
I believe somebody said they wanted to call it D2. Is that in Slack or Twitter?
That was on Twitter. Jordy Mon Companies, who's a listener and one of the hosts of Software Engineering Daily. We know Jordy. He's the one who said, call it D2. I was like, that's a good idea.
That would be a good one.
Is it Jordy?
Yes.
In my brain, I've had it mapped to Jory.
It could be Yordi. It's a J name that, you know, whenever someone's potentially around the world, J's are pronounced differently, but he's from the UK. I don't know. I'm going to go with Jordy.
Okay.
Yeah, call it D2. You know, write it in Towery. We'll cover it here at Changelog News, of course. But yeah, R2 is just too new to have all the great tools. I mean, S3.
Yeah.
Right? Just has everything.
It's been around for a while, for sure. So what I wouldn't delete the changelog assets on S3. I mean, we can consider that our backup. If something was to go catastrophically wrong with R2, again, I don't expect it to happen, but you know, better be safe than sorry. I mean, we can keep those 100 and whatever, 200 or however many gigs we have in S3 for this. We won't be doing any operations against them, so it shouldn't cost us much other than storage space. and continue using R2, maybe even set up a sync between R2 and S3 so that we have a backup to the backup, or like a backup to our new CDN in a way. So that would be good. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. So we are on R2. We did it. And it was a breeze.
Why not consider B2?
Flat backplays?
Versus S3.
So I know, I listened to the episode, by the way, great episode, loved it.
Backplays episode?
The Backplace episode. And I'm using them, and I have been using them for many, many years. When I've set up my Kubernetes backup strategy, by the way, I have a Kubernetes cluster in production. That's a thing. And all my workloads now running on Kubernetes. We can talk about it later.
In your home lab?
No, in production.
Okay.
Like for Dagger or?
Well, what that means, I mean, I've been hosting a bunch of websites for decades.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So it's like mostly WordPress websites, some static websites. We're talking 20 websites. I won't be giving any names. Again, they're like longtime customers.
BBC.
nytimes.com.
That's right.
That's it.
The
BBC,
Verge,
all of them. Yeah, exactly. So I've set up this production cluster. I mean, this was the second one. I set it up in June. And I've been hosting these like workloads. I was using a lot of DigitalOcean droplets. I had about 10. So all of these I consolidated in 2 bare metal servers. And they're running Talos, and it's all production. So obviously production needs backups and it needs restores. So what I did when I was migrating between Kubernetes clusters, these workloads, the backups were going to B2. And B2 was okay, but slow. Like sometimes unexpectedly slow. I had the same feedback from Transistor FM. I had them on Shipit, and they were saying some operations on B2, sometimes they're slow. So they can take minutes instead of seconds. And that was my experience as well. Restoring things from B2 was incredibly slow. So it took me 30 minutes to restore, I don't know, like 10 gigs roughly. And that's not normal. So what I did, I said, okay, I have to try R2. I tried R2, same restore, 3 minutes. So there's a 10x difference between B2 and R2 in my experience. Again, it's limited to me. So that's why for big restores, I'm restoring for R2. But of course, I'm using both B2 and R2 because I have 2 backup mechanisms in place.
Of course.
The reason why I suggest or even ask B2 versus S3 is if it's only for backup, B2's based on their pricing page is 0.005 cents per gigabyte per month. And S3, if this is accurate, is 0.026, which is 5 times the cost per gig.
Yeah.
So if it's just backup, we can deal with slowness, right? I mean, and if it's a restore, we can deal with slowness. We can just buffer that into our mental space and then, keep 5 times our dollars.
So here's a question related to Kaizen and infrastructure and whatnot. If we were to say, okay, what we want is a backup service that takes R2 things and puts them to B2 once a day or once a week, or even it's just a mirror, just constantly mirroring, where would we put that? Where would it run? How would it work?
We could write an OBAN worker for it.
True.
What I would do is solve it as a CI/CD job, yeah.
So it would be a custom robotic arm inside of our Dagger.
That's it.
And it would pick it up and it would move it and drop it.
It would be GitHub Actions, and it would just run there. I mean, we could have an OBAN worker as well. I mean, whatever we're more comfortable with.
Yeah.
But then should our app know about this? Maybe it should. I mean, it has access, right, to all the credentials.
It's easy in terms of secrets and stuff. It's already there. I mean, we obviously have to add the B2 stuff.
I think the question is, do you want to do it or should I? That's what it comes down to.
This is a good question. I'd rather you do it.
There you go. So that settles it.
I don't want to do it. You like how I had to act like I thought about it for a second? I made it dramatic.
Yeah, you did. You really acted that out good, Jared.
I did.
What's interesting to think about, just kind of almost separating this conversation a bit, is you mentioned Dagger and you mentioned GitHub Actions. And I'm just curious if Dagger's a potential acquisition target for GitHub. Because if you are complementary and you're improving, and every time we have a problem like this, your solution is a background job built into CI using code, Go code, whatever code you want, because that's what the move from Q to everything else went to for Dagger. And you're so complementary in terms of Dagger to GitHub Actions. You're not cannibalizing. You're only complementing.
I can definitely see it.
So a year from now, Gerhard will work from GitHub.
Anything is possible. So that's a good idea there, for sure. Now, on that subject, again, I didn't want to talk too much about Dagger in this Kaizen, but I'll just take a few minutes. So I noticed that we had, again, this is Fly apps v2 migrations related, where we used to run a Docker instance in Fly, and that's where Dagger would run, would have all the caching, everything. So our jobs would be fast, our CI jobs would be fast. And part of that migration, the networking stopped working. So I was thinking, okay, well, we have all this resiliency in all these layers, but we don't have resilience in our CI. So if our primary setup stops working on Fly, in this case, then nothing works. So I thought, well, why don't we use the free GitHub runners? And that's exactly what we did. So now if you look in our CI, and there is a screenshot in one of these pull requests, let me try and find it. It's called Make Our Shipit YAML GitHub Workflow Resilient 476. So the TLDR, it looks like this. When Dagger on Fly stops working, there's a fallback job where we go on the free GitHub runners. It takes longer. It takes almost 3 times as long, all the way up to maybe 10 minutes. But if the primary one fails, we fall back to GitHub. We are also running on Kubernetes, Dagger on Kubernetes. So we have 3 runtimes now: Fly, GitHub, and Kubernetes. And the common factor is Dagger. We made it really simple to have this sort of resiliency, because at its core, it's the same thing. We just vary the runtime. But we didn't have to do much. I mean, you can go and check our Shipit YAML workflow, GitHub workflow, to see how that's wired up. Again, it's still running. It's still kicked off by GitHub Actions. But then the bulk of our pipeline runs in one of these places. So
where's the Kubernetes stuff?
That's the production Kubernetes, which I told you about.
Oh, it's at your house.
Well, no, it's not. I have an experimental Kubernetes cluster in my house. This is a real production one, right? Running like in a real data center, not my house.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
It's not like you never run any of our production stuff from your house.
Exactly, I did. And it worked really well, I have to say, for a while. And then obviously we improved on that. It was a stopgap solution.
Hey, we've had the work from home movement, everybody's taking their work from home, and it's like, well, why not bring your work to your house? Take your CI home with you.
Exactly. I take the CI.
Okay. So this is a production Kubernetes thing of yours that this is running on. This is that's a third fallback in case, or.
That one's slightly special in the sense that one doesn't deploy yet. So it runs and it builds, but it doesn't deploy. So there is this limitation in GitHub Actions. And again, if someone from GitHub is listening to this, I would really, really appreciate if some thought was given to this. So when you select runs on, when you say GitHub runs on, all the labels have to match. So what that means is that you can't have a fallback. You can't say runs on this or that or that or that. You can't define like a nice fallback. So then what you do, you have to basically say this job needs the other job. And if that job, it's just a mess. So if, for example, Kubernetes was not available, how do we specify a fallback? And when I say not available, it can't pick up a job. So it won't fail, it's just not available. So a job will basically wait to be picked up for a certain amount of time, and then it will time out, most likely. Again, I haven't tested this fully, but that mechanism, the runs on mechanism, is pretty inflexible in GitHub Actions. Now, in the case of Fly and Docker, that's fairly straightforward. It basically starts on GitHub and then eventually it hands over to Fly because we start another engine. Anyways, you can go and check the workflow. I don't want to go too much into the details, but that's a simpler proposition. When you have a third one, which may or may not be there, it's a bit more complicated.
Gotcha.
So right now I'm just running it as an experiment to see how well it behaves, to see, if it is reliable long-term. And if it is, then maybe, make a decision in a month's time or 2 months' time. But for now, it's Fly with the GitHub fallback.
Cool. Resiliency for the win. Always have 2.
Yes.
And now we have 3, just in case.
Well, I didn't even consider that we would keep S3 for a backup or consider B2 as a lower cost backup, because I thought, well, we'll just, cut our ties, keep our dollars, and move to R2. And that's done. But that does make sense, because what if R2 poops the bed, we're going to have some issues. We got all of our almost a terabyte of assets we've been collecting over these years, our JavaScript, our feeds, whatever we're going to put there ever.
Yeah.
If we have no business continuity, which is a phrase I learned, 20 years ago now, business continuity, right? That's key in backups, right? You can't just put the backup over there. You've got to get it back to keep doing business.
Yeah.
So that does make sense. I didn't consider that, and I'm glad you did.
And the cost will go down, right? Because again, we are using R2, which is free for egress. S3 isn't, so we're not pulling anything from S3. I mean, if anything, we can move the bits over to B2 so that the storage costs will be lower. But again, there'll be one-off operations. And by the way, when you write, actually, the operations, you pay for them. But anyways, the point is it will cost us something from S3 to migrate off S3, but it's like a one-off cost.
We've already done that, though, haven't we? So when we just move from R2 to B2?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Actually, that's a good point. Yes, exactly. We migrate from R2 to B2. That's correct. So maybe delete S3 after we migrate to B2. That's there.
Cool.
Well, you can delete my bucket now because all the files are gone. So go ahead and get that done at your leisure. Doesn't have to be.
Okay. So let's see me refresh. Yeah, that's right. So let's get this thing done.
Yep. Confirmed. It's gone. Bucket's there. Files are gone.
Got an emotional attachment to this bucket, though. I've been using this for a long time.
You have another one in R2, by the way.
It's not the same.
Which is assets dev that you can use.
That's right. But that's shared across multiple people. So it's not as personal. Like, this was my bucket, man. This was my bucket.
I see. We can create one for you. It's okay. We can create one for you.
It's free.
I appreciate you consoling me as you delete my bucket.
Change log uploads Jared. No fat fingering, delete bucket,
Don't
boom.
Misspell
That's
that.
it.
Boom. Oh, it's gone forever. All right.
Cool. What about the backups? What about the nightly backups? Is that something that we can clear? Because by the way, there's a lot of backups going all back to 2000 and something. I even forget what it was.
Those are assets backups or database?
I think it's a database. No, this is another one. This is the small one. This is like from our pre-fly migration. We can come back to this a bit later because it has just like a few, and this costs us nothing. Backups nightly, they start in 2015.
Oh, it's nightly? This is a backup of changelog nightly.
Yep.
We don't need that.
We don't need that?
No, man.
I don't think so.
But this is still happening.
Yeah, it is because my code works.
Right.
I wrote this years ago.
2015.
I forgot about this. We've been backing up changelog nightly every night.
Might be some of the first code you wrote for this company, Jared.
Might have been.
So the last backup is 76 megabytes. Like, do we want to delete the old ones? Like, what's the plan here?
Yeah, man. There's no reason to have them because each one has the entire contents of the previous ones.
Oh, I see.
It's not like differentials or anything. It's like the entire folder structure of changelog nightly, which is all static files.
Right.
Every night we add 2 static files and send an email, and then we back it up. And so that's just been happening for years.
Wow.
And so I forgot about it. So yeah, this can
Okay, so we'll fix this.
just keep the most recent one. Just keep one. In fact, tonight we'll have a new one. So you can delete them all. We'll create a new one tonight.
Cool.
What do we do about tomorrow, though?
Well, we could make it run less often. I think that would be fine. Make it run like weekly.
No, hang on. I think that's fine. What we can do is like set some sort of an expiration or like auto purging on the objects.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Okay, that's the better idea. Good. Okay, cool. So we'll fix that as well. Great.
Keep the last 10.
Great.
I can't believe the nightly folder structure of just HTML files is 76 megabytes of HTML. It seems like a lot.
Well, maybe worth something. It's a tar. So it means there is no archiving, no compression of any kind. I'm wondering if we can make it smaller. Where does nightly run, by the way?
It's a production Kubernetes cluster in my closet.
in your closet, right?
It's on an old DigitalOcean droplet.
I'd actually like to get rid of that, but
Don't say where it is because I'm sure it's like so unpatched, that thing. It's like a honeypot to this point. Like there's so many, the exploits have exploits to this point.
Yeah, thankfully it's just straight up static files served by, I think, Nginx, but...
no SSH.
No, oh, yeah, no SSH.
No SSH,
Don't tell
good.
anybody that they can SSH to it.
No
Yeah.
FTP, nothing.
Nope, can't connect to it.
Right, completely firewalled.
It's actually air gapped. Yeah, I don't even know how it does what it does because you have to walk over to and put the thumb drive in.
for every request, we have somebody go plug it in.
Yeah.
Yeah, every night we plug it in, it runs, and then we unplug it.
Should we put it on the fly? What do you think?
We certainly could. Honestly, changelog nightly is like its own entire subject. It's the quality has been degrading lately because of the rise of malware authors just attacking GitHub constantly. And so there's a lot of malware stuff. I'm like, the only change that I've made to Changelog Nightly in the last couple of years is just fighting off malware. We just don't want malware repos showing up. And like, they're constantly, it's cat and mouse, has been.
Why don't we just shut it down?
Yeah, it still provides a little bit of value for about 4,000 people, you know?
Yeah, it really does.
And me, I still read it. I still find cool stuff in there. It's just harder. You have to scan through some of the crappy stuff. You know, there's just some crappier repos in there just because GitHub's so big now. It's become a little bit rigid because it's like an old Ruby code base that sometimes like I got gem file problems on my local machine. You know, it's just like you can't run it locally. I only can run it from that DigitalOcean server. So I go in there in Vib and edit stuff.
So you don't want me to see it. That's what you're saying.
No, I don't want you to look at it.
Gerhard is not allowed anywhere near this thing. You just flip over.
This is legacy code. This is legacy code. I've thought about rewriting it in Elixir and just like bringing it in and having like a mono repo deal. And then we would have our like, and then I'm like, why would I put any time into this? There's so many things I can work on.
I see.
So Nightly is just kind of out there. We could definitely put it on Fly. I think that would definitely help our security story, but it might be tough because it's like Ruby 2, it's like old gems, stuff like that.
If there's a container for it, it doesn't really matter. It really doesn't.
That's what I'm telling you. It's Ruby 2, it's old gems. There's no container, man. This is like pre-Docker.
No, I mean, there is a Ruby 2 container.
Oh, yes. I'm saying there's no like Docker file for Changelog Nightly is my point.
We don't need a Docker file. If there is a Docker container that we can start off, that's okay. We can keep it exactly as it was. So I'm looking now at the Ruby official on Docker Hub image.
Ruby 2.3.3, patch 222.
2.3. Yeah, there you go. 6 years ago, it exists. We can pull it. We can base it off on this.
I learned this with ChatGPT recently with running. I didn't want to set up a dev environment. I was just for fun trying to run Jekyll without having to actually install Jekyll or anything, because Jekyll's notoriously just kind of hard to maintain because it's Ruby and gem files and all the reasons. And so I'm like, I want to just run the entire thing in a Docker container, but still hit it from a typical web browser like I would to develop a blog. And so my Jekyll blog lives in, I think, a Ruby 2.7. I don't even remember what exactly, but it was something that was like safe for ARM because I'm on an M1 Mac and all that good stuff. And it was like a special Docker file there that I could just run and build off of. So similar to what you're saying here, you just kind of go back in time to a Docker file that was out there for Ruby 2.3.3 and call it a day.
Patch 222.
Yeah.
We can totally do this, and it will like challenge accepted. Show me Nightly.
Okay, show me Nightly. Show me yours and I'll show you mine.
Well, that would save us $22 a month, Gerhard, I think. Something like that. That's how much we spend on this Nightly server for DO. It's about $25 a month.
And it's literally the only thing on there.
Yeah. And we have hundreds of gigabytes of backups.
Hundreds of gigabytes of backups. We're really redundant.
But we'll fix that.
Since we're mentioning Changelog Nightly, though, and the spamminess of it, I do want to highlight a spam situation in the most recent one. But I think it's actually a student, and the person's handle on GitHub is RSRIRAM9843.
Okay.
They have, I'm not sure their gender, desktop tutorial, project 3, project 1, project 4, develop demo. So check those out. They seem to be pretty popular because they're in the latest Nightly's top new repositories. There you go.
You don't think it's spam, or you do think it's spam?
Well, I mean, it looks like a normal person. Maybe they did that. I don't know. It could be I don't know. It seemed like a normal person would qualify as spam, that it doesn't belong there.
Yeah. Like it's a bot or it's malware.
They very well might be a bot. I mean,
yeah.
In that case, if it is, don't go there. I've just identified a bot to not check out.
Here's how far I've gotten, but I haven't pulled the trigger yet on trying to actually have a malware/spam detection system for Nightly that's actually good. Is I take a list of a bunch of good repos. Here's what we have: owner, which is like GitHub handle, repo, which is the name of the repo, right? And then like the description. That's what we have. And I took like 20 good ones. Like these are legit, but they're diverse, you know, because you can put emoji in there. Some people write in different languages, etc. And I pass it off to ChatGPT. And I say, here's an example of 20 good projects on GitHub. And then I pass it some bad ones. And then I say, is this one good or bad? And it's about 60% accurate.
Really?
It's slightly better than a coin toss. And I thought, well, that's not good enough because this is all automated. I'm not going to act on 60% confidence, or 60% accuracy. I can't just be like, nah, not good. I think you'd have to fine tune. It gets above my pay grade of being like, okay, let's take Llama and fine tune it. I would love for somebody who's interested in such things to try it. For now, I'm doing a bunch of fuzzy matching on just common things that spammers do in their names. There's duplication, there's these words, there's leak code, and that inevitably is cat and mouse. But I think you have to almost go to a GPT to actually have a decent system. That's as far as I got. And I thought, well, not only is this not accurate enough with my current implementation, I'm on an old rigid Ruby 2 code base that I can't really what am I going to do? Pull in the OpenAI gem? I'm never going to be able to get modern tooling into this system until Gerhard saves us with a Docker file or whatever he's going to do.
A Dagger pipeline, but yes, close enough.
Yeah,
close
sorry,
enough.
Wrong company.
I'll Daggerize it. That's what's going to happen.
We need to Daggerize this sucker. That will be Kaizen, slightly better.
That'll be the next one. Cool. So the last thing which I want to mention before we start thinking about wrapping up and thinking about the next Kaizen is mention that now we have status.changelog.com.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that happened. So when we are down, hopefully never.
We've got 100% uptime on changelog.com.
Now the checks, they don't run every 30 seconds. We are still on the free tier. This is better stack. And I think the checks are every 3 minutes. So if there's downtime, which is less than 3 minutes, it won't even be picked up by this tool, by this system. However, if there is an incident, we will be communicating it via status changelog.com. So if changelog was to be down, again, not going to happen on my watch, but it has happened many years ago, and it wasn't us, it was Fastly. Remember that episode? I forget which one it was.
Yes. But BBC was down too, so.
Again, after I say this, boom, everything crashes and burns. No, not going to happen. I'm not going to even attempt it. But yeah, so that's, I think, the one thing which I wanted to mention. We have a status page.
Very cool. And for those of us on my side of the pond, you go to status.changelog.com. If you're in the UK, you go to status.
Yeah, status. That's it.
Both will get you there. Just depends on how you like to say it.
STATUS. Like POTUS.
We can agree on that. Like POTUS. I was going to say, you got the US in there. I appreciate it.
So what are we thinking for next Kaizen? What would we like to see?
Oh my goodness. I would like to see changelog nightly upgraded in the ways that we just discussed. Off of DigitalOcean specifically. I would like to see
clustering working.
Clustering. I think we need to get clustering working so we can use Phoenix PubSub. I think we have to do Elixir releases to do that. I was reading about it a little bit.
That's there.
So that's when I stopped and was like, releases. This is outside of my wheelhouse.
So I looked into that, by the way, but then I decided to leave them out of scope for the migration. That was I think for the previous Kaizen. But there is some code in our pipelines to do that.
Okay. I would like to see Oban Web installed so we can have that observability.
Top of my list.
That one should be easy enough.
Adam was mentioning middleware IO, trying it out maybe.
What's middleware IO?
Did I mention that? I did. Oh, yeah. AI-powered cloud observability platform.
Ooh, shiny.
That's a nice headline. I do like that. It gets me in there because it's AI-powered.
Right. That's how you raise money today, is your AI power stuff.
And it's also cloud observability. It's also a platform.
It has all the buzzwords. Was this generated by any chance? Is this a real website?
Yes.
They reached out. I asked you if you saw it. So usually we get lots of inbound requests from people. Some are legitimate, some are whatever. But my smell test is, Gerhard, did you hear of this? Would you try this out? Would you want to try it out? And I don't think I've spoken to them yet, but we do have something in the works to get connected. So I will escalate that up my list to make sure I do so. And then I think, Gerhard, you said you wanted to play with it, right? So we can probably get an account to see if you like it and go from there kind of thing.
Cool. One worth trying, the wild card.
Yeah, there you go.
What about something that gives us more than 2 SLOs? I mean, that's which we didn't talk about.
Yeah, we didn't talk about that, but come on, Honeycomb. What's the deal with that? 2?
I know.
I will tell you, here's what's happening. While we were talking on this podcast, I was emailing Christine Yen because she's going to come on a future episode of Founders Talk. And I like her. I like the whole team there. And I think they do amazing work. And we obviously reference and leverage Honeycomb as critical infrastructure. Like I don't think we could do what we do with quite the way we do it. Like the listeners didn't get to see you share your screen, but Jared and I did. They'll hear what you said about what was on your screen and they'll follow along, hopefully. But we were like knee deep into layers and layers of observability data that's inside of Honeycomb. And we don't have to like program or what do you call that, instrument, right?
Yeah.
These things to do it. It just captures it and we just ask it questions. Obviously, I think it has a length of time of logs it can go through, right? Like there's 6 weeks or 8 weeks or a couple months. I'm not sure what
Yeah, it's 2 months, 60 days.
2 months, 60 days.
Traces and everything.
Enough for us. Maybe we can get more. I don't know.
We're hitting the limit, by the way. We have 100 million events per month, and we're exhausting that because we're sending all the traces.
Yes, we're getting emails about it. They keep telling us like, hey, you've gone over X again this month.
Right. Threatening.
And by the way, we are paying for it.
We are paying for it. Yeah, we are paying for it because we haven't made this connection yet. So my hope is, and Christine may be listening to this right now because I sent in the email, hey, Christine, literally we're talking about Honeycomb as I type this because we're on the podcast.
We're talking about you
and
right
it goes
now.
out this Friday. And here's an echo because I'm now talking to her and everybody else in this very moment here and just suggesting like, hey, we're big fans of Honeycomb. We want to partner with them. We want to find ways to speak more about them, but more importantly, improve. Like 2 SLOs on the free plan I'm curious, why is that limit there?
It's the pro plan. It's the paid plan.
The pro plan.
The free one, you don't get any.
Gosh, even there you go. So there you go. So if you're paying for the pro plan, you should get more than 2 SLOs. And if you don't, why? What's the cost to enable an SLO?
Well, here's a quick question before we go. There are also now triggers, and I was in there poking around, and I see the SLOs, and I see the triggers, and triggers seem to be based on similar things that SLOs are based on. It's like if this happens, trigger. Do these work together? Are they separate features, Gerhard? Do you understand triggers better than I do inside of Honeycomb?
So triggers is almost like alarms, right? So it's like an alert.
Right. But isn't SLO also like an alarm? Like, hey, you haven't reached your objective.
Kind of, but it gives you like the perspective of like the last 30 days, right? So when you click on one.
Does it email you?
Yes, I do get emails and you can.
This one says triggered right there. It says it's been triggered.
I mean, this basically gives you almost like a graph and you can do like comparisons, like to start understanding like
Gotcha.
When does this SLO fail? And by the way, some of these things aren't that helpful. And again, that's like to Adam's point, there's like more to discuss about this. But what's important, we have a budget and it tracks the budget and we see whereabouts we are. A trigger will not have that. A trigger will say, hey, this thing just happened. So an SLO, I think it goes further. You have obviously an SLI and it keeps track of that. And then you receive emails when you're just about like 24 hours from exhausting your budget. And that makes it really helpful.
Right. Okay, fair enough.
They're deeper. There's more things to track.
Seems a bit redundant to me, but I can see how you might just have some one-off triggers that don't need to be like full-on SLOs. I wonder if we could use those to get around some of our 2 SLO maximum, maybe.
Interesting.
Possibly.
So it's almost like when something is slow, but again, like, can it take into account? Maybe it can. Maybe we just need to write a query that takes into account. But then apart from the dashboard view and the comparison view, there must be something else about SLOs as well. I mean, why not just call them the same thing? It's just, if it's just that.
Because I think SLO is like buzzword compatible at this point. Like it sounds like a thing that you could charge money more for.
I see. Query run every 15 minutes. So maybe.
Anyways, let's look into triggers a little bit. But yeah, we definitely want to get some more SLOs.
Yeah, more SLOs. And we spell it MOAR.
Because Gerhard says, look, you should have 2 of everything.
Yeah.
Except for wives and SLOs. You should have more. You should
More
have
than
less than 2 wives. Less than 2 wives.
Definitely, yeah.
And more than 2
Yes.
SLOs.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
2 of everything else.
Right. So, hi, Christine. If you're listening, can't wait to talk. Stoked. Love Honeycomb. More SLOs.
More SLOs, please.
Yeah. This has been a fun Kaizen, though. I mean, I think, I've been quiet quite a bit during this show because y'all do the work and I just get the pundit as necessary. It's great to see all this work done. I mean, it's great to see us now like improving, yes, but I think, paying attention to how we spend money with S3 and making changes and leveraging, other players in the space. Mad respect for Cloudflare. Would love to find ways to work with them, in any way, shape, or form. And the same with BetterStack. I think, the status page is something we haven't really, looked further into with working with them. But like part of this journey with Kaizen is like, improving, but also finding the right tools out there that we like, that we can trust in terms of, who's behind the business and the way they treat the community and the way they frame and build their products. Finding those folks out there that we can work with ourselves and leverage, but then also promote to our listener base and saying, hey, these are things that we're using in these ways. And all of our code is open source on GitHub, which you can see these integrations. But I think it's beautiful, right? Like to have an open source code base and like to integrate with Dagger since, 0.1 or whatever the release was initially when you first got us on there. And then having that conversation with Solomon on the changelog and kind of going into all that. And like all this stuff is out there in the open. And we just invite everybody listening to the show to just follow along as you'd like to see where we go and then how it works when we put it into place. So that's kind of fun. I like doing that with y'all. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, same here. I mean, this really is unique. I mean, to be able to discuss so openly and to share the code, like we're not just like talking about ideas or like what we did. This is like a summary. And hey, by the way, there's a changelog, there is a GitHub repo. You can go and check all these things out. And if there's something that you like, use it, try it out, and let us know how it works for you. So yes, we're doing it for us, of course, but also a lot of effort goes in to share this. So it's easy to understand. It's easy to try using it and try it out and see if it works for you. And we're open about the things that didn't work out because a bunch of things didn't.
Right.
Precisely. To close the loop on the invitation, I would say if you made it this far and you haven't gone here to this particular webpage yet and joined the community, you should do so now because we are just as open and welcoming in Slack in person as we can be. Go to changelog.com/community. Free to join. Love to talk to you in there. Lots of people in Slack. It's not overly busy, but it's definitely active. And there's a place for you there. So if you don't have a home or a place to put your hat or hang your coat or your scarf or whatever you might be wearing, or take your shoes off and hang out for a bit, that is a place for you to join. You're invited. And everyone's welcome, no matter where you're at on your journey. So hope to see you there. What else is left? What can we look forward to?
One last thing. If you join the dev channel in Slack, please don't archive it.
What the heck? I just noticed that.
Obed Frimpong joined and he archived. And then Marosh Kuchera joined and unarchived. So that just messes up with our clients. So please don't do that. Don't archive channels. I don't know why people can do that. I mean, maybe there's some fix that we should do.
Yeah, maybe.
You'd think that would be a setting, like no.
That's the limit of our invitation, okay? We are very open and very inviting until you archive our channels. And then we don't want it to happen. So don't do that.
That's like coming into our house and being like, oh, I threw away your kitchen table. I hope you didn't need that.
Yeah.
I gave that to a neighbor.
I got rid of
The neighbor
that.
needed a table.
Yeah. Play nice. Be nice.
Play nice.
That's right. Otherwise, welcome. But, all right. Kaizen.
Looking forward to the next one. Kaizen.
Kaizen. Always. This Changelog and Friends features a Changelog ++ bonus.
That's what the crowd wants.
Gerhard's boss, Solomon Hikes from Dagger, was on the Changelog a few weeks back, and we just had to get Gerhard's review of that episode.
I didn't listen to it.
What? Come on.
I just wanted to see the reaction.
How rude. Actually, he listened to it twice, and he has opinions, of course. If you aren't on the ++ bandwagon yet, now's a great time to sign up. Directly support our work, ditch the ads from all of our pods, and get in on fun bonuses like the one that ++ subscribers are about to hear. Check it out at changelog.com/++. Thanks again to our partners, Fastly.com, Fly.io, and Typesense.org. And to our Beat Freak in residence, the mysterious Breakmaster Cylinder. Next week on the Changelog. News on Monday, Debian's 30th birthday party on Wednesday, and Justin Searles right here on Changelog and Friends on Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again real soon.